Hi, folks. Talking about the water cycle today and also the phosphorus cycle. So, this has been something you've learned about since probably the third grade, and we're going to talk a bit more about it and how it plays a role in continuing of nutrients. Remember, everything gets recycled, so that same water droplet will be around for a million years. Okay, move on. All right, water cycle. Unlike in previous cycles you've studied, the producers, consumers, and decomposers have little impact on the water cycle. Non-living processes play a large role in this cycle. So think of a non-living process. If you said rain, yeah, you're right. Rain is not alive. Water is not alive. Yet it is important to living things and needed for what living things. Okay, so that's what we mean by non-living processes. All right, so water cycle highlights. The sun's energy evaporates water from the land and water surfaces. Gaseous water vapor added to the atmosphere. Water vapor, as it cools, condenses to become precipitation, and then plants absorb water. So there's some processes right there on this page. We've got evaporation. That's because of radiation from the sun. We've got condensation, and we've got precipitation. So we've got three processes right on there. We have plants absorbing water. That is also known as root uptake. Then you have consumers obtain water through drinking and eating. Plants lose water during transpiration. Transpiration is known as evaporation from plants' leaves. And you got runoff, which eventually re-enters the atmosphere through evaporation. So a couple more processes here in the water cycle: transpiration and runoff. Those are important processes. So here's the picture showing and highlighting those processes. You have the sun giving us radiation. It's shining down. And then what happens to a body of water? It starts to evaporate. It changes over from a liquid to a gas. And then in the atmosphere, we have condensation happening, and this would be the changeover. And then when it changes from a gas to a liquid, it will fall as precipitation. And it can fall as snow, hail, rain, sleet, whatever. Okay, those are all the forms that precipitation takes. And then how does it get back into the body of water? It's runoff. A couple other processes shown here. You have groundwater. This is the storage of underground water. You also have transpiration that happens over here, and that's happening as the trees and plants give off water. Okay. Another picture of the water cycle. And this one, and I like how it shows you a circle, how it's going around and round and around. Okay, the same water going around and again. It also shows you the more of a collection under the ground. And this one, it doesn't tell you, but there's something also known as sublimation that comes off of the ice in the mountains. We'll get more into that in environmental science if you take that in the future. All right, next moving on to the phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus, where have you heard that before? Well, if you said DNA and RNA, you are correct because we know that phosphates and sugar makes up the side of the DNA molecule, the ladder, the sides of the ladder, sugar and phosphates. So everything alive has DNA. So you can see how much phosphorus is in living things, a ton of it. So it is needed, and it's one of those things we don't usually think about. We don't ever think about where is it in our world. Okay, well, most places you're going to find it, it's in rocks. Okay, it's not usually found floating around in the atmosphere. And as the rocks are worn away by weather and erosion, that's how phosphate gets back into our living things. Plants love phosphates, it's a source of food for plants. Okay. So just think rocks, main storage for phosphorus. So here's a picture of the phosphorus cycle. You've got the phosphate in the rocks as erosion, weather, rain happens. It ends up in bodies of water. It ends up being dissolved in the water. Animals and plants take it in. Here's some more coming down here. You have it ending up over here in the fertilizers. It is part of plant food. You have nitrates and phosphates, a part of plant food. Okay, so it helps plants grow. Plants love that stuff. It is good food for plants. Now, what happens if you say there's too many nutrients? Actually, it's a bad thing to have too many nutrients. Okay, just look at that algae bloom right there. Right? That's when you have too much of a good thing. Amount of nutrients available determines the speed in which the organic matter is created by the producers. It's called primary productivity. Limiting nutrient is one substance that can limit the progress made in an ecosystem. Fertilizers can cause algae bloom in lakes and rivers. So to have that nice green grass growing in the summer, you sometimes add what's known as fertilizers to your lawn or to your plants. Those fertilizers are loaded with nitrates and phosphates. Then what happens if there's rain? Well, it takes that fertilizer in the form of runoff. Where does it end up? In your rivers, in your lakes, in your ponds. And then what does that create? Ooh, that's food for plants. Now, in water, the plants is called algae. So algae loves all this phosphates and nitrates. So they eat it up, and then this is what happens. It covers the lake and algae. Now, this is not a good thing because this can create a bacteria situation. As it starts to die and decompose, it's a breeding ground for cyanobacteria. All right, and that bacteria causes it to be an unhealthy, unswimmable environment. Even the fish can't survive because it sucks up all of the dissolved oxygen in the water. And if animals don't have dissolved oxygen, like fish, they can't breathe underwater with their dissolved oxygen, then they die. So this is a bad situation. It's called eutrophication. Again, if you're taking environmental science, you'll get into that term more in the future. But just know that sometimes too much of nutrients can be a bad thing. All right, so 7 minutes. That's it, folks, for today. That's it for our nutrients and how they get recycled. And make sure you answer the 11 or 12 questions on the guided reading. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.